In our first video, we went through the process of constructing a data analysis template for a specific piece of assessment. What I'd like to do in this video is demonstrate ways that we can flag items on our data analysis template that students struggled with. So I'd like to demonstrate a way that we can flag items in the selected response, as well as items in the constructed response and the final student percentage. So I'm going to start with my selected response items. If I want to know what percentage of my students got a particular item correct, I can actually add that in the bottom row of my spreadsheet. So what I'm going to need is a cell now that says percent correct. Now in order to calculate the percent correct, I'll need to take in the total number of students along with the total who got it correct. In this case, my spreadsheet was constructed for 20 students. And I'm going to use this row here in my calculation. So I'll need to push the equal sign. And what I want to do is I want to divide the total number correct by my number of students, which was 20. And I'm going to multiply that by 100. And what we'll see is that I get 100% of my class in this case had it correct. And once again, I can take that single calculation and drag it across for every constructed response item. So what we'll see is that because we have 20 students and nobody's got anything wrong yet, we're going to get 100% on each constructed response item. Of course, that will change as we start inputting student data. For the constructed response, what I can do is I can again create a section that will calculate the student percentage. Now the way I'm going to do that is I would need to know the individual weightings on the questions. Now I've got 15 marks, so I'll just distribute them among these 4 questions. So in this particular case, I'm going to take the student average on the question, and I'm going to divide it by 4 because I'm going to say that this question was worth 4 marks. In the next case here, I'm going to take this question, divide it by 3 because I'm going to say that this question was worth 3 marks, and multiply by 100. For the third column here, I'm going to do the same thing. I've used 7 marks so far. So again, I'll say that this question was worth 4 marks. And again, I'm going to multiply by 100. And finally, for the last cell here, I've used 4, 3, and 4. That leaves me with 4 marks left. So the last question was worth 4 marks, and I'll multiply by 100 again. Now I'd like to keep the formatting the same on these, so again, I'm just going to drag my mouse over those, use that nice blue text I had before, and I'd like to have them bolded as well. And I'm going to center them for when the values get calculated. So now we've taken care of calculating the percent correct for each item on our examination. What we're going to move into now is adding some conditional formatting for the cells. Up top along the toolbars, what you'll see is that if we go over far enough, we actually see a drop-down menu that's labeled conditional formatting. So what that allows me to do is add specific conditions that will change according to the value in the cell itself. So I'm going to select along the bottom row where I've calculated the percent correct. And what I want to do is I want to add conditional formatting to this. When you click the drop-down menu, you'll notice that there are several options available. What we'd like to do is manage the rules applied to these cells. When you open that menu, you'll notice that right now there are no rules applying to these cells. So we need to add a new rule. When we add a new rule, we'll have several options, and what we would like to do is look for cells that contain a certain value. So we're going to format only cells that contain. And we're looking for cells that contain a value between, in this case, 0 and 49.99%. Again, we're dealing with percentages, so we can use the full numbers. What I'd like to do is have the value in these cells flagged red if this class achieves less than 50% on that item. So I'm going to need to format that cell. When we click Format, you'll see that we have several options available to us. I'm going to start with the font, and I'd like the font to be bold, just to maintain the convention I've been using of having my numbers down here bold. I'd also like to have the color white. The reason I'm choosing white is because I'm going to be filling this cell with red, and red provides a nice contrast with white. So the fill I'm using here, meaning that the color of the cell will change, I want it to be red. I'll click OK, and you can see we get a nice preview of what the text will look like. And once that's done, I can click OK, and I've now added conditional formatting to these cells. And I'll demonstrate how that works after we've added our second rule. What I'd now like to do is add a second rule, again for cells that contain. This time we're going to look at values between 50 and 59.99. So this would be the category of students we would label as at risk, or an item in this case would be at risk. So I'd like to have a yellow background on this. That one's a little too bright, so we'll choose a bit of a darker yellow. And I'm going to go with black font and bold it. So you'll see that we have a nice contrast. And I'll click OK. So you'll see what I've done is I've created two rules that apply to these cells that will flag items if done poorly. So when I click OK, these cells actually now have conditional formatting. So what I'd like to do is just to demonstrate that. I've got 20 students. So if only 50% of them get it correct, so I'm going to change the first few answers till we get down to 55. So you'll see once we get 55, now we've got it flagged as yellow. So what we know is that our students didn't do that well on this item. If I go a little bit further and go down below 50, it now formats as red. So what this allows you to do is easily identify items at a glance where students struggle. What I'd also like to do to maintain consistency is to bold these items and center them. The same would be true for this question. You'll see that we had this question marked at a 4. The average on this question was 25% for the class. You'll see as the average gets closer and closer to 4, we no longer have it flagged. So again, I'm going to delete those values and leave the sheet blank at this point. So right now we flagged each individual item on the examination. What I'd like to do now is flag the final student percentage. So the way I'm going to do that again is I'm going to highlight the cells that I wish to flag, and I'm going to go up to my conditional formatting tab once again. I'm going to click on the conditional formatting tab, and again I want to manage my rules. So I'm going to apply the same two rules to this column that I applied to my individual items. So I need a new rule, and I want to format only cells that contain. And again, I want these to be between 0 and 49.99. These will be the items I want to flag as red. So I'm going to choose bold once again, white font, and a red fill. And I'm going to do the same again for the at-risk items. So again, items from 50 to 59.99. I'm going to choose that bit of a darker yellow. I'd like to have the font bolded. I'm going to do that as well. So now you see I've got conditional formatting added here. And automatically they're all yellow because we only have our selected response items being tabulated so far, so everybody has 50% in the exam before we enter any data. So what this allows us to do now is enter sets of student data, and we'll easily be able to identify areas where students struggle, not only on the total percentage for the exam, so those students at risk in the unit and those who failed the unit, but also individual items. By having the capability to easily flag individual items, that also allows us to, at a glance, know where we need to focus review. I hope you find this video helpful, and I hope this really aids in your review.